I'm now going to show you how to configure telemetry for WikiPakk that can be used for usage tracking, so you know how much value your users get from WikiPakk and if they use it at all. And if they interact with the page tree and with the children display web part, this interaction will generate events. And those events will be stored in a SharePoint list. So they don't leave the tenant, they stay in SharePoint. And initially this is turned off because the list does not exist. And only if you choose to configure it and if the list exists, WikiPakk will start generating those events. I'm on a SharePoint site where WikiPakk is installed. I have the page tree here. I also have the children display web part active. And first, I want to check the current state of telemetry configuration. In the page tree panel, there's a question mark. If I click that, the dialog opens, and here I click telemetry, and then I have the check telemetry setup status link. And when clicking that, WikiPakk is checking if everything is in place. And here, nothing is in place because we have to configure it. First, we have to create a tenant property. Tenant property is something like a key value store where tenant properties are stored in SharePoint, and you can put values there. And WikiPakk looks for a specific value telling it where the site collection is, where it should store events. And we need to set this up, and this is set up by running PowerShell. I have a PowerShell script here. I'm using Visual Studio Code with the PowerShell extension and the PNP PowerShell module. There's documentation about all of that on the website. I'm already connected to SharePoint, and the command I'm running now is set PNP storage entity. And this sets a value for the key wikipakk.license site URL. And I'm running this by selecting this line, right-clicking, run selection, and that's basically it. Just make sure that you are connected with an account that is site owner or site collection administrator on the site collection app catalog. That is the place where apps like WikiPakk are installed centrally in SharePoint. And this is also the place where those values, those storage entities or tenant properties are stored. So now when checking the status again, it says, okay, I found something. And this is the URL we just configured. Sometimes it can take a couple of seconds or maybe half a minute until this change is reflected here in the UI. Just keep clicking until you see the change. Now the next thing to do is go to this site and create the telemetry list. I'm using the link here to open my configuration site, and I also have to add WikiPakk here as an app. It's not added yet. I'm doing this right now. It'll take a couple of seconds because WikiPakk can also create the list for us. Let's go back to site contents. Wait a couple of seconds until the page tree button appears in the upper right corner. There it is. Again, I'm using the question mark. I go to the telemetry section, and now I click ensure WikiPakk telemetry list exists in current site. And this creates and configures the telemetry list. Make sure you are a site owner or again site collection administrator on the current site, otherwise WikiPakk might not be able to create and configure this list. So I'm scrolling through the messages here, nothing looks like an error, that is good. Now I go back to site contents, refresh it, and there it is, the WikiPakk telemetry list. Looking at the list, I see it's a list. It has pre-configured fields like component, action, and so on, and it's yet empty. Important about this list is that events from different users will be stored here, and users could also access this list, but they only see events from themselves. So This is important so one user cannot see events of another user. But of course, when a user opens the browser, serves SharePoint, WikiPakk, writes events to this list, access has to be granted for events to be written to this list. But it's always such that each user only has access to their own events. This is important. Okay, now let's go back to our initial site and check if everything is in place. Expanding the page tree panel here, going to the question mark again, click telemetry, check setup status, everything is fine. So the tenant property is set, telemetry list can be accessed, and thus telemetry is now enabled. And now when I go back to the list, I should already see events flowing in. Let's go back to the config site, site contents, WikiPakk telemetry, and there's the first event. And this was me hiding the global page tree, which is the page tree panel. So now when I go back to the site, I can expand the panel. I can click a link and I close the panel. And I now go back to the event list, refresh it. I can see 3 new events. Let's sort by timestamp, newer to older. So those are my 3 activities. Global page tree show is me expanding the page tree panel. I click the link. I don't see which link, but I see a click happened. And I also see the site ID. This is the site where the actions happened. And I'm logged in as Adele, so created by, here is the Adele user. And the same is true for interactions with the children display web part. So when this shows the child pages of the current page, and when I click on a link here, now when switching back to the telemetry list, I see different events here. I see children display web part click, I click the link, and also that the web part has been shown. So every time as a page is opened where the children display web part just shows up, this will generate an event as well. And the triggered by column in this case is not user but app, because the user did not interact yet with the app, but it was just shown. And that's basically it. This is how you set up telemetry for WikiPakk.